Parents that use nanny cams, what is the most bizarre thing you caught on it? My brother had a camera that was left in the basement just for safety reasons. He had some workers over to fix a tile shower since it didn't drain properly. I guess the guys were pretty annoyed at having to fix it, but it's their own fault for not doing it right the first time. Fast forward a couple weeks and my brother's sister-in-law is turning 21. They are in his basement bar when they start pouring shots of vinegar for her. As they were pouring, they could smell something wasn't right. Her boyfriend immediately thought it smelled like nail polish remover. They decided to check the camera and sure enough, the workers drank some alcohol and replaced it with a full bottle of nail polish remover. They found the empty bottle under the bathroom sink and my brother's wife knew that was her unopened bottle she had bought previously. Kind of messed up. Geez, they could have killed somebody. Our crib was under a window, shut and locked. Don't worry, every few days or so a hawk or some other kind of large bird would land on the outside of the window. The bird and my daughter would sit there for a good 10 minutes bobbing their heads at one another. It was adorable, despite the fact the bird probably wanted to eat her. Birds bobbing their heads is actually a mating behavior fail. My dad has cameras set up in the house as well as smart lights. They used to live overseas but still had the house. One time my brother and I were hanging out at their house while they went on a trip. They left for the airport and we started watching TV. It was after dark. Suddenly the lights started flickering in the house. Scared the pee out of me. A couple minutes later I get a text from mom. Sorry, we're about to take off. Your father is sitting here cackling watching you guys jump around as he turns the lights on and off. We'll let you know when we land. Your dad sounds awesome. Buddy of mine had a kid at the beginning of last year. Discovered that both his cat and his beagle would climb into the crib with the baby occasionally during naps. Cute, right? Both animals made it a habit to climb in, push the baby to the very side of the crib and curl up in the middle completely alone. You'd catch them glaring at the kid if he started to roll back over and invade their space. That's how I feel nightly with my dogs. They are medium to small dogs. But damn it, get off my butt and free my feet. I need to wiggle. Using a baby monitor to care for aging parent. My sister comes in and tries to convince my dad to cut me out of the will and give everything to her. When I was a toddler, I went from fairly chubby to very skinny in a matter of weeks. My parents were worried that I was sick, and when they asked our nanny, she said everything is fine. A few days later, they decided to install a camera to see what was wrong. Keep in mind that after lunchtime, she would let me nap and then go home. That was the deal. It turns out that she would feed me a few bites and then throw my food away so she could leave earlier. I was too young to make anything of it. This was all caught on camera, and she was fired the next day. You should have sued for child endangerment. Not on a cam, but on a babyphone. My aunt liked to tell a story from a time when her children were small. One time she was lying in bed, everything fine, and then suddenly she heard a deep voice saying, "It's me, the monster. I came to get you." Of course she went into panic mode instantly, ran to her child and nothing there. So she went back and heard the voice again, realizing that it's one of her neighbors playing with his kid. Turns out those devices used the power grid and, since they both used the same model, apparently made her hear what was said into the neighbor's babyphone. Nightmare fuel, until they figured it out of course. I never would have, I'd have just frozen and died. Not me, but a co-worker. It was not actually nanny cams per se. She has 3 cats and apparently while she was at work, there were damaging things in the house. She set up the cameras to find out which cat was the culprit and how it could be stopped. Well, before she was able to figure that out, she actually watched as 3 men broke into her house. Now she could not call 911 because she lives in a different state than she worked in, so the 911 centers had no way to hand calls off to each other. She got lucky another co-worker happened to live at the opposite end of the same county as she did. He was closer to my age and lived there before there was 911. Just like me, growing up his parents made him memorize his county's 7-digit fire police dispatch number, and luckily his county had left that number active so that employees and other departments had a way to call directly into the dispatch center. He rattled off that number and she dialed it. Voila, it got into her county's dispatch center. She was able to talk to the police and tell them not just what the guys looked like but which room they were in and where they were crouched down. They were arrested without incident, although all three had guns on them. All property was recovered not only from her house but from 2 other houses on the same street, and they got long prison sentences. And it all started with one really bratty cat. My buddy has a camera that sits on his doorstep. It has a motion sensor, and every time it detects someone or something on the porch, it snaps a photo and sends it to his phone. It's a Sunday morning, and for once, his 2-year-old isn't shouting into his bedroom to get him out of his crib. Ah, yes, a rare morning to lay in bed. His phone goes off. A photo of a little red-headed boy reaching out of the front door to grab a package appears, and that's how he discovered that his son could get out of the crib. As a fellow parent, that is the most frightening. I have my house surrounded by CCTV cameras. One day, just all of a sudden, in the city of New York, in Flushing, an entire herd of goats just randomly walked into the area where our tiny front yard is. They stood there and nobody came to get them. It was completely bizarre. I looked up any information I could find about parades or anything that would have had goats around. None of the neighbors saw anything. This is a regular street in Flushing with only houses around me. My mailbox was eaten off the fence post. They were around for 20 minutes. I'll never know why they were there. In my borough, Staten Island, they hire goats to keep the grass and weeds down in Fort Wadsworth during the summer. That's the only possible reason I can think of. Baby monitor. I woke up to the sound of heavy breathing. To find a face close up in the camera, 2 eyes and a nose, my son figured out how to pull himself up on the crib rails. I may have stopped breathing for a few seconds. Very freaky. Needless to say, we moved the camera to a more elevated location. I took a picture of it. I'll post it later. On the other hand, I know of a family who had a full-time plus nanny cleaner cook, known as a helper in Hong Kong, and often expected to work 20 hours a day, plus sleeping in the same room as the kids, with only Sundays off. They got a nannycam and fired this woman because after spending her entire day getting the kids ready for kindy, cooking a hot breakfast, picking up after the family, doing 3-4 hours of cleaning, prepping for dinner, setting out activities for after she went out to get the kids, in other words, after a very full day's work for minimal pay, she had the audacity to sit down on the family's couch, in the communal room of the house she was contractually obliged to live in, for 15 minutes to have a rest before leaving to get the kids, work for 10 hours straight and sit on the couch for 15 minutes of downtime before getting the kids, making dinner, cleaning the house, welcoming the parents home, serving dinner, cleaning up after dinner, fired. My old roommate has 2 kids of his own. The older kid, 3, deactivates the baby monitor cam when he and his sister want to do something they'll get in trouble for. Kid even waves bye to the camera before he pulls the plug. That's when you get a second one without their knowledge. My girlfriend's, now fiancés, parents have security cameras. I used to pretend to not care much for my girlfriend's cat around other people. Then when they were out of town, we took care of the dog and brought the cat over. They saw me on camera holding the cat over my head and dancing softly in a circle while looking into his cat eyes. The jig was up. Not a nanny cam, but one of the audio ones so you can hear if they're crying or whatever else might be going on. I was up very early one morning, 5 AM, getting a little work done in my house office. Had the thing with me so I could hear my baby daughter, about 2 months old at this point. Suddenly I hear a woman talking very, very softly. My whole body went cold and I stopped everything to make sure it wasn't just my imagination. Yes, I still hear it. At the same instant that I prepare to dash into her room, I hear a little more and realize I'm hearing a motherfucking autoplay video audio ad on a tab in my web browser coming from my computer speaker, which was turned down really low. I thought my heart would never slow back down. Our desktop computer is in the basement, and once my wife didn't close a website and at 3 o'clock in the morning I hear 2 people talking. Literally jumped out of bed, grabbed my gun and went to the top of Festers. Once I got closer I figured out that the thieves in my basement were talking about Overstock.com. I cleaned the poop out of my pants and went back to bed. Super late, but whatever. When I'm home from college I babysit for these pretty wealthy people. At the time the boys I would babysit were about 2 years old and 9 months old. It was summer and I had laid the younger one down for a nap. Then took the monitor out with me to the backyard so the 2-year-old could play. I hear sound going off and see arms reaching into the crib to the sleeping baby. I grabbed the 2-year-old, a knife, and slowly walked upstairs. Their grandma had come to see if I needed any help, but didn't have my number so she didn't text me she was there. We laughed about it but never have I ever been so ready to shank someone. You get an A for effort. You like to think a babysitter, especially a younger one, will make the hard call to defend your children but you just don't know and that's a risk parents take. Not a camera but a monitor. Had it on one night and heard someone talking. It was some older lady talking about what it was like growing up in Africa. Weird as crap. Cordless phone intercept. I got fired because of a nanny cam. I was working for a very rich, by Australian standards, family. The dad was a surgeon and he'd invented some kind of special surgical screw. Anyway, so I was 25, looking after their 5 children, all boys, aged 17, 16, 11, 9 and then baby surprise who was 3 years old. The 2 older kids obviously don't ever need me, and the 11 and 9-year-olds were really sweet and cute and didn't need that much. The toddler though, just the worst kid I'd ever cared for. Really bratty and awful, but stopped short of torturing small animals. One day we're stuck inside playing Star Wars Lego and he's bossing me around and talking about the cat walkers we're building. I'm like, little dude, it's it for real. He cracked it, flipped over the fancy Lego table, told me he hated me and ran downstairs. Being the consummate professional I am, I calmly flipped him off for 2 whole minutes before I went down and helped him cheer up. Next day I was fired. I have a toddler, and I can total relate and empathize with the flipping off. Honestly, sometimes you have to do it in order to keep your cool. I'd much rather people flip their kids off than hit them. Back when monitors intercepted phone discussions in the 90s, I was a toddler. We had lesbian neighbors, one of whom traveled frequently, so at night they'd call each other from afar. My devout Christian parents were privy to their conversations. Your parents said they didn't like it, but they kept on listening. Every night they waited for the phone call. Not a parent, but once caught the babysitter taking the baby's blanket, putting it around her neck like a small cape, and flying around the room with it on. Keep in mind, the baby could only see out of the crib and was not present for the show. Needless to say, we found out she was often high during babysitting. I got really nervous after Redding putting it around her neck but I liked the direction it went. Unexpected and hilarious. Just me. I went into his room to get him and said daddy's here, don't cry. I went with him back to my room and heard my monitor say here, don't cry. Since my voice sounds so alien to me I freaked out and watched in horror as a tall man grabbed my baby and walked out. It really probably took 1 second to realize I was holding him and it was me in the video, but I went through 10 years of grey hair in that second. When you push the button to view our monitor it shows a brief second of the last image before the screen shut down. I've completely freaked out several times before realizing the woman over her cot for a second was just me tucking her in earlier. It will also replay the last sound it recorded so I'll view it to have her scream for a second but then lie perfectly still. It's terrifying. When my niece was around 4 years old I had her stay for a weekend while her parents went away. They loaned me a baby monitor because I sleep like the dead and probably wouldn't hear her from my attic bedroom if she woke in the night. I was just settling down to sleep when I heard this horrendous hacking cough over the monitor. I bolted to her room thinking that she was choking but she was still sound asleep. A few minutes later I heard it again but this time there was a female voice too saying shhhh. You will wake her up. I charged in there again to find her fast asleep and alone. It was then that I realized one of my neighbors must have the same cheap butt baby monitor and I was picking that up. Not a cam, but when I was 2 I started to become skittish so my parents put in a recorder with my foreign nanny and found out she was hitting and slapping me. There was a small hair or thread on the camera lens of the monitor and it looked like something moving under our son's blanket. Very creepy. Totally believe it. I have definitely been startled by little bits of thread that look like spiders in the right light. Well, it didn't catch my kids doing anything weird. I had it set up while me, My husband and kids went away for a few days to visit family. I had a friend of mine who was a recovering alcoholic and staying with us to help get straight, watch our house and take care of our dogs. I felt like it was a simple enough task. There was zero alcohol in our house and she had no car and the closest store was like 10 miles away, and her mom, being her only contact in town if she needed help, definitely wouldn't get her alcohol. We are about 2 days into our trip. I text my friend to see if everything is going well. Hours go by with no reply. I try calling her several times and she won't pick up. Her sister calls me worried that she can't get a hold of my friend either. So I turn on my nanny cam to see what's going on. She laying on my couch with nothing on but a tank top and my front door is wide open. I can talk through the camera and try talking to her, but she was unresponsive, but I can see that she is breathing. I call my uncle to go over to my house to check on her and find my dogs. I can see on the camera when my uncle gets there, he tries to shake her awake, but she just groans and won't talk. He throws a blanket over her and finds my dogs locked in the laundry room with crap everywhere, and my dog chewed up the hose on my new Dyson. I was pretty pee. My uncle hangs around a while until she wakes up and has no clue what happened. He asks her how she got so fricked up and she told him that she drank a bunch of mouthwash. Don't underestimate addicts. I'd like to say though that she's been sober a year and employed and getting her life on track now. I was the au pair. The parents had a monitor in their room downstairs and the other in the kids' bedroom upstairs. The monitors did two-way communication so the parents could let the kiddos know they heard them and would be on their way. One time I was putting them to bed as the parents were out, and as we are reading there's this breathing sound on the monitor and the little one just asks who that is. TF, I don't know, but I gotta be cool so I pretend like nothing as I nervously continue bedtime routine. Kids didn't pay much attention. They were convinced I was Batman and Superman. Jumped out the window at night and saved the world so they would never question any security safety issues. Sorta assumed I got it. Back to story though. The dog did it. One of them was sleeping with the head close enough to the monitor downstairs for it to catch the noise. I can tell you in like 1995 I was babysitting for this really wealthy family, and I couldn't figure out how to turn the TV on. The little girl was fast asleep and I was so bored. I checked out her enormous playroom and ended up playing with a doctor kit with their little Shih Tzu dog. They literally walked into the house on me with a doctor coat on, weird doctor headband that looks like a headlamp, and taking the dog's heartbeat with a stethoscope. I was like 15 and so bored. They were speechless. Doctor headband that looks like a headlamp. A otolaryngologist's mirror, used to focus light down a throat prior to the invention of small headlamps. I've posted this before a while back so I'll copy and paste it here. They are now 3 and 1.5 years old. I babysit my cousin 2 kids pretty much every other Friday night so he and his wife can have some time alone and out of the house. Their kids are 2 and 6 months so they have video monitors in each of their rooms and I pretty much watch the monitors and read or watch TV. Roughly a month ago I heard talking coming out of one of the monitors. It was a man's voice and he kept saying over and over again, "It's okay. Go back to sleep. I'm here," and I could see a figure standing over the crib in the 6-month-old's room. I freaked out thinking someone has broken it. They had a break-in around Christmas time and the guy was never caught. I called the police and my cousin and crept upstairs with a knife to protect myself and the babies. No one was upstairs and both kids were sound asleep. Needless to say I was thoroughly freaked out until the police and my cousin came out. It didn't help that they lived in an older home and everything creaked. Fast forward to last week, the exact same thing happened to my cousin during the day while the kids are napping. But since it was daytime the video monitor gave off a better picture of the room. Apparently the one monitor in the 6-month-old's room switches over to the neighbor's monitor every once in a while. The voice I heard was that of his next door neighbor soothing their crying baby who is around the same age. When you said their kids are 2 and 6 months I thought you meant one was 2 months old and one was 6 months old. I had seen you mention that they are now 3 and 1.5 years old, and my reaction was how the heck did one grow up faster than the other? I need more coffee. Finally I have a weird relevant story to post. Back when I was relatively young, probably 8ish, I had an Action Man doll toy which had a speaker in its chest, along with a portable microphone you could speak into and your voice would come out of the chest of this doll. Pretty cool. Well, It gets interesting because the neighbors had a baby monitor set up, which happened to use the same frequency as this Action Man doll. So when I started playing with it, I got these creepy baby crying sounds etc and the sounds of my neighbors trying to hush the baby. Needless to say, my parents and I were freaked out until we figured out what was going on. I had a nanny for our chicken cooperative. I actually caught one of our neighbors brandishing a power drill about to break into our cooperative. I called the cops and her defense was I was worried about the eggs. The cops let her go. Thanks rural America. I love that you have one for your chickens. Frick your neighbor though. I had an elderly neighbor who was an ex-cop and nosy as frick. He had huge antennas on his house and I knew he was monitoring the local police calls. I also knew he could hear me on my kid's baby monitor. One day he did something to pee me off. So I went into my kid's room and called him every name in the book through the baby monitor. I knew he heard it because he was never friendly with me after that. Frick him. Not a nanny cam per se but close enough. Worked with a guy who was a young techie. He'd installed one of the remote control home systems Internet of Things when they were pretty much a new thing. He was newly married and his wife had moved into his house. We were on an installation assignment in California, often working late. He'd open up the remote control and look at his wife reading on the couch in the living room. Then he'd start freaking with her, turning on and off different lights around the house. She looked scared and turned to look at the camera, flipped him off and screamed, "Dang you, stop that crap or I'm moving out." I used to babysit a 9-year-old kid with autism, along with his almost 2-year-old brother. He really liked to watch YouTube videos alone in his room, and his parents were cool with me letting him during the 3-4 hours they would leave me with the kids, as long as he ate lunch and as long as he didn't watch anything inappropriate. They had a nanny cam in the baby's room. So one afternoon, I put the little one down for a nap and bring the laptop with the nanny cam feed with me to the living room, so I can get some reading done. I look up maybe 10 minutes into nap time, and I see the 9-year-old performing the most mind-bending and impressive dance choreography I've ever seen, while his little brother watched in complete awe. This kid was like a little Bianca. The best part was his parents confirming that they had watched it too, and they had no idea that he was studying dance videos on YouTube and that he could actually perform such an amazing routine. 5 years later, they're on Facebook sharing how he's in his high school's pom squad and how dance has helped with some behavioral delays. Best nanny cam moment ever. My ex-husband about to try to molest my daughter. That's freaking horrible. Hope he got his butt sent to prison. My cousin has a video baby monitor that connects over Wi-Fi. Her husband travels a lot and likes to check on the baby at weird hours without having to wake his wife, so he can just log on. It also has a microphone feature so he can talk to his daughter. She is 2 now but was about 18 months when this happened. She was inconsolable one night and my cousin kept having to go soothe her back to sleep. The 3rd or 4th time entering her room, she heard a man's voice, not her husband, talking to her crying baby. She changed the password and sent out a warning to other parents to change their passwords. Scary stuff. OMG. That is so horrible. I wonder if this is something that sickos often try to do. Not a baby monitor or nanny cam story, but my sophomore year biology teacher once told the class a really creepy home security footage story. So my teacher lives with her husband and her house is in some back roads with a couple of neighbors nearby. So one morning while everyone was at work she told us that a group of people dressed up as furries were snooping around her house. She explained how at first it appeared as if they were trying to break in the house and steal stuff, but things got weird. They decided to hide around her house and seemed to wait for someone to come home. She said they stayed for 1 hour and 27 minutes, then they left the site of the cameras into the back trails. They got the local PD involved and purchased self-defense weapons. This story fuels my fear of furries. Not a nanny cam, but my parents caught me on CCTV stealing cigarettes from their shop. The babysitter was casually saying, "Go and get me a couple of these packets from the shelf." Probs too late, but meh. I was babysitting for my sister a few months ago and was checking on my 2-year-old nephew through the nanny cam, asleep in his crib. I got up to put dinner in the oven and when I came back I checked the cam again and there was a huge black mass in the crib with him. My sister doesn't have any pets, so I was like, WTF. A black dog or cat or something had gotten and is attacking my nephew. I ran upstairs like crap off a shovel and saw, to my horror, my nephew has pulled a black bin liner into the cot with him and had crawled inside. I got him straight out of it and he was fine. I took the bin liner back downstairs and just sat on the floor crying. This was my first time babysitting for my sister. I had a go at her when she got home. Who keeps a bin liner where their baby could get it, and she said there was one in his cupboard full of nappies, diapers, well out of reach. So we checked and the nappies were in there but the bag had been taken out, somehow. For your information, bin liner equals garbage bag in the UK. I am glad you were watching. I can understand that being pretty traumatic for you. Okay, not a parent, and not a nanny cam, but my nephew and his baby monitor. Sis called me cry laughing to tell me that niece went into the nursery and proceeded to lay out a few house rules on her 4-week-old little brother. Sis says it was things about sharing, and cleaning up and being nice and protective and minding his manners. That was funny enough, but niece finished with this gem. Everybody pulls their weight in this family. You're lucky you're only 9 pounds. That little bossy munchkin. She's super protective of him. Still, I have multiple pictures of them holding hands while they nap. The babysitter would sniff the kids' underwear after changing them. What the frick? I look at the baby monitor and see a ghost. I do a double take. Yep, it's really real and on the monitor hovering and swirling around my infant son. My brain jumps. WTF do I do? Should I go grab my son? This can't be real. Maybe the ghost is harmless. Should I get my camera? No one will believe it. I don't believe it. Is the ghost going to hurt the baby? I can't believe this is happening. Will the ghost hurt the baby if I interrupt? Think logically. It's not a ghost. It's not a glitch. It's definitely in the room hovering over the baby. Think. Breath. Calm. Think. Oh, it's the camera light reflecting off the vapor from the humidifier we installed this morning. Lol. Ghosts. I knew I didn't believe in those. The same thing happened to me. I figured it out pretty quickly, but we had a friend over a few months later and it freaked him out pretty badly and took some time to convince him it was okay. We had a camera that covers our backyard and it has a microphone. We had a pool party and invited people over and our friend law attorney sat at the table under it and told another attorney how he was sleeping with my wife. And now only I have the house. Upvote if you want me to post the video on YouTube. Some perv hacked into the monitor and was whispering fricked up crap to my kid. I got caught having a dance party with the 8 and 10-year-olds I was babysitting. It was to Daft Punk. They couldn't sleep, so we danced until they passed out. The parents loved it, but I was so embarrassed because I felt so weird that they saw my creative solution to getting the kids to go to bed. I bet the parents were happy they'd found a good sitter. The cam at home has some sort of lag sometimes and the baby had not been feeling well. She was about 2.5 years old at the time and had been whining while on her sleep the whole night. I woke up to a loud cry to find her standing on her bed. She wasn't moving, just standing there and movement was still heard from the cam speaker. She was just still. I rubbed my eyes and opened them again to find her moving while laying down in bed. It was the most freaky thing ever. While not a baby cam, I used to have a Logi circle camera. They are basically baby monitors that I can link up to my phone. I also had a setting on it to get a notification on my phone every time motion was directed. Like the second night I had the thing, it was set up where it could see most of my living room and the front door. I was in bed just about to fall asleep when motion detected on living room camera shows up on my phone. As someone who was recently on their own for the first time, that freaked me out. Check the footage. Turned out to be a bug that flew in front of the camera and the night vision picked it up. As someone who is terrified of bugs, I have really long thick hair. A huge bug would have still freaked me out as I'm convinced they are all trying to attach to my hair so they can crawl into my ears and eat my brain. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.